Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. If you noticed, you did not have to sit through any commercials for any of my videos ever, and that is because I choose not to monetize my channel via YouTube. That said, the only way I do monetize my channel is through some Amazon links with their associate program. So if you want to help the channel out, please shop through those links. I'll have a link for anything I use in the video, including this compressor. But with that said, let's just jump right into it. So this ToAuto compressor has been an absolute workhorse, and I have been using it to fill bigger tanks than I should be filling with it and just pounding on it constantly week after week. I have not used any of my other compressors since I got this one and did my initial review. Now, in that previous review, I did mention I blew out a power supply on this. ToAuto shipped me another one. I put it back in, and I have just been cranking on this thing relentlessly for months, and it has been fine. But I also do keep a little log of how many hours I have on this thing, and it's right at about 20 hours. So rather than wait till it fails and then do maintenance on it, we're going to actually just go ahead and do the maintenance now, a little bit of preventative maintenance, take it apart, see what it looks like inside, maybe clean anything out, add some silicone grease where it needs it, and then start her back up. So we're going to show you how to completely take this thing apart. And when we do that, we'll go inside and I'll do the typical tech video with the beach towel, as has become a custom on this channel. So let's go in there, take this thing apart, and do a little bit of maintenance. All right, so getting started here, you're going to need a tech mat, in our case, of course, a beach towel. Then you're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver to get all the little screws off of the case. You'll need some metric Allen keys. I've got some T-handle ones and some L-shaped ones in case we have to get into confined spaces. So that's really all you need, I think. Now, I have not taken this one fully apart. I have taken it apart to replace the power supply, but I have not taken it fully apart to do any actual maintenance on the piston and whatnot. So we'll sort of get through it together. I'll drop any links for all of this stuff that you might need in the comments to make it a little bit easier for you guys. But yeah, let's go ahead and tear into this thing together, see what makes it tick, and do a little bit of maintenance on it. All right, let's go ahead and get started into ripping this thing apart. So first thing you want to do, remove your bleed valve screw, because that is going to prevent the case from coming off. So there it is. Put that aside for now. And then I'll save you sitting through me doing this, but you're just going to take off all of the screws around the unit, and then we can pop the cover off. So I'll do that here next. All right, so that's what it looks like with the cover off. I've got all the screws there. The screws are all the same length and thread pitch. They're exactly the same, so you do not need to, sort them or anything. You just throw them in a pile, no problem. The cover itself does not have any wires or anything attached to it, since the digital gauge, or the digital readout rather, is down here. So you can just pull that right off. I wanted to show that because some of the compressors do have wires and things attached to them. And then here's the compressor itself. So we have the power supply unit here. Here's the compressor. That's the piston right there. Got the motor down here. Here's your output block. And actually, I mentioned what you need to take this apart, but I forgot one thing. You are going to need a spanner wrench to operate on these a little bit. So I will go ahead and grab one of those before I dig deeper into this. But the next steps are basically going to be, well, let's see here. We've got some screws holding the motor on down here. So those are going to definitely need to come off. Once we have those off, we can go ahead and pull the motor, and it looks like I'll have to disconnect it from here, and then just disconnect this is the temperature sensor right here. Comes off easy with a screwdriver. Take that off right now, set that aside. So that just goes on there and measures your temperature. And then the only other thing that is connecting to the compressor in terms of wires are the power wires going to the motor. So we might be able to just not even disconnect those. Let's see. I'll go ahead and take this apart at the bottom with removing the motor. And you know what? I think I might even be able to get away with not taking this off at all. But when we open up the compressor, we'll need to remove these guys to get that piston housing off. So let's go ahead and give it a shot and see what we can do here. So the first thing I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to drop these screws. This will prevent me having to take off that block down there in terms of taking off the actual high pressure line to it, and then that's just going to save me the headache of possibly having a leak. Now these ones, let's just check. Those screws on here are a little bit longer than the normal screws. So I've got in a pile over here, hopefully it's in frame, the screws from the housing. That is the temp sensor screw, and then those are the two block screws. So now with that loose, I should be able to pull that out of there once I have the compressor loose. So next, we'll go ahead and take off these 4 Allen keys on the bottom here. It looks about like maybe a 4mm. Nope. It's going to be a 5. So we'll get them out of there. I always put my bolts in the same orientation they came in. So I know it's kind of OCD, but works for me. I like to just put things back together exactly how they were. And now I'm going to have to support this a little bit because we're dropping the bolts out. All right, so now that's loose. So can we pull this carefully out? We are going to see. Okay, yes we can. We've got the gauge wire that is for the auto shut off down here. It looks like that is okay. So they have, I don't know if you can see, but they've sort of hot glued over the terminals. So what I'll do off camera is I'll go get a pick, and hopefully you can see it. I'll pick off some of that hot glue, and then I should just be able to simply disconnect that very easily from the terminal. And I will also disconnect the temperature sensor, which is the left one. And let's see what else do we have on here. So that's the on off. Okay. So I'm just going to disconnect a couple of wires to just make this a little bit easier, and we'll go from there. Okay. So that was a bit of a pain. I don't know if you can see where I've disconnected these wires in here, but they had hot glued them shut, I guess, to avoid having them pop out under vibration of it running. So I tried using a dental pick to get that off of there. It was not the best tool for the job, so I just used an X-Acto knife and came right out pretty easily. So I do have the motor still connected by those wires, and that's going to be fine. What I'm going to do is just take everything apart with the motor still wired, because I have enough room to work here. So hopefully that's all in frame. So we'll, and I'm going to leave the block on there as well. I don't think I need to really take apart this block at all. But the main thing that we do need to take apart is the motor. And this is the same on all compressors. And look at that. Look at all the buildup of dust from the fans. So this needed it. I'm glad we're doing it now. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go get a spanner wrench, and then we'll remove these guys right here, and then I can remove the piston and everything, and it'll come right out. So I actually could remove it. Oh, this is a smarter design than I've seen in some of the previous compressors. So first I'm going to clean it up though. So we'll go ahead and take you through step by step here and get to the bottom of this thing. Okay, I just slightly dampened a paper towel, and look at all that. That's just from the fan blowing right over the compressor head there, the piston. So that is definitely doing a good job as a fan, but inevitably you're going to suck in some stuff from the outside environment. So just before we start taking this apart, probably a best bet to clean some of that out. And there is quite a bit in there. Just a bunch of stuff that we don't need getting anywhere else in this compressor. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And now what we can do is I'm going to actually leave. So the way this works is there's an offset spindle in there that's cranking around in that oval circle, and that's what's compressing your piston. So all we need to do really is just remove these 2 bolts. And actually, since one of them's a little covered by this, you can actually just move this by hand back. So good, it's perfectly exposed like that. All I should need to do is remove those 2 guys, and then I can remove those 4 bolts here, and that will allow me to just pull that whole top of that compressor off. We don't really need to mess around much with the motor's fine. You're not going to be able to service the motor anyway. It's pretty much a disposable part. Once it's dead, but it's running real strong. So we'll take those out, we'll pop the piston off, and that's where the real maintenance takes place. So I'll go ahead and start that next. All right, I went ahead and put a microfiber down so that we don't get grease on my super sweet tech mat, beach towel. But basically, you're going to take the same 5mm Allen key that you use to unbolt the motor from the housing, and you're going to take these 2 out. They can be very, oh man, so that is pretty extreme. They are very tightly in there. They might have Loctite on them. Oh, there we go. Okay. So we're going to get those out. Ooh, very tight. There's one. When you put those back on, you're going to want to put them in real tight as well. All right. And notice how I put them in the same orientation that they were in there. That's just something that I always do. All right, very good. So now the piston is essentially disconnected from here. So looking at this, it looks like the next thing we're going to do is just go ahead, and looks like it's about a 4mm in there. Yep. So we're going to go ahead and pop these off. Now, whenever you're working on anything that is in a radial, always go crisscross, whether you're loosening them, but more importantly, when you're tightening them back in. So this is going to remove our whole housing. And like I said, these compressors, they're simple to work on. So don't be too intimidated to do this job. You're either going to do maintenance on your compressor and keep it running for a longer time, or you're going to just have your compressor completely fail because you never did maintenance on it. So I'd rather do the preventative maintenance myself. Okay, so we'll with the block facing that way, we'll just remember we're taking these out and putting them in this orientation. Now it doesn't really matter, again, just something I do out of OCD. And now that piston will come right off the housing, or off the motor, and we can go ahead and put that motor over here for now. And what we really want to look at is this piston housing. So I'm going to actually, before I even tear into it, we can see it's pretty dirty. I'm going to clean off what I can. And then what you're going to need is a 10mm to go boop and take those 2 guys off. And those are compression fittings. Those should go back on, but you want to put them back. I want to definitely put it back the way it was. So remember, the curve is like this way, like kind of like a D. So with the block facing that way. So we'll put it exactly back how it was. But first, I'll get some paper towels and we'll clean this off. All right, some light cleaning. I'm going to pull this out. Is that as far as it goes? Oh, well, that came off a little too easily. I should have taken these off first, but that's okay. They're flexible, so no harm done there. And looks like we'll only have to take one off. And I'll take this one off. So we can see already. Now, I didn't anticipate it popping open like that, but we can see already it's pretty dirty in there. So we have our top right here and the bottom part right there. So you can see, just very dirty. We'll set this aside for now. Let's clean up this one. Now this will just pop right off. Okay, there's your piston. That should pop right out. So that's your sleeve. We're going to make sure that we put this back in the orientation that it was. So I'm going to set it like this for now. Let's clean this piston off. It's got graphite seals, so you can't replace these. You shouldn't need to. What we're going to do though is we're going to just get all this grit out of here. I mean, this is from 20 hours of continuous running. So this compressor has definitely seen a lot of use. You can tell there's just lots of grime in there. So get it as clean as you possibly can. We want to get this baby running like new, and I hope that it runs for another 20 hours because this thing has just been really a great compressor. When it dies, I will buy another one, but I feel like I've already pretty well gotten my $400 worth of value out of it just with how well it's performed. I've saved a lot of use on my other compressors from it. So now this is going to slide in a seal in there. You can see it's filthy. We're going to clean that out too. But having this impeccably clean is going to be a smoother operating part because it's going to be able to slide in there with less friction, which is what you want. Less friction, less heat. So that is pretty clean. This side of the piston, we'll clean that off. And you may have noticed I've got my silicone grease and silicone oil. We're going to need those too. I'll drop links in the comments for those. Guys, only ever use silicone on high pressure stuff, silicone oil, silicone grease. Anything else, if it's petroleum based or even has any petroleum distillates and things in it, it will explode and you will definitely get exploded and possibly die. So don't be doing that. I don't know that we can take this piston apart any further from how it already is. I know it's got a little, I can see the check ball in there. So it seems pretty clean, honestly. And I think that's not really serviceable. So what we'll do is we'll clean as best we can. I better get another clean paper towel here. I'm going to try to cram it down in there and just scoop out any debris. See, it's moderately pretty clean now. But I think that's pretty good. Just trying to scoot it in there. Now you can take this bottom ring off. I'm going to put it there in the same orientation. Let's clean under that. Okay, so that was a good thing to do because look at that. I don't know if you can see, but tons of stuff just fell out of there. So I'm just cramming the paper towel in there and just going around in a circle, and I can still see tons of stuff coming off. You see it all? Just get all that stuff out of there. And there is quite a bit of it. So just get as much out as you can. I think that ring is the guide ring. The top one, I believe, is the sealing ring on the piston, and I don't think that doesn't have like a gap like this one to take it off. So just leave that one. We'll lube it up with some silicone grease in a minute, but just leave it for now. So that's pretty good. I'm just gonna carefully clean this off a bit, and then we'll just put that back on. Okay, like that. And when we do jam this back in, we're going to have to kind of pinch it together. So, and it's the same thing here. So it's because it's a two-stage pump, right? So you've got the same, another little piston in the middle of the big piston, which has the exact same stuff on it. So those ones look pretty good. We will lube them up before we get it going again. So then we have this. I'm just going to simply clean it inside. You see that? Quite a bit of debris inside there. Not bad though for running it for 20 hours. It's pretty impressive, honestly. But yeah. So that's nice and clean. I don't know if you can see inside. Very, very shiny. Get that all cleaned up. Okay. And then we have this, which is filthy. Now, this part and this part both have an O-ring right there. And you're given a couple replacements by ToAuto. So you're given some replacements by ToAuto when you get the compressor. So I'm just inspecting those O-rings. They look fine. So I'm not even going to bother replacing them. If you suspect that they might be leaking or you damaged them taking it apart, definitely replace them. Now here's where we're going to get the disgustingness inside there, because that is the friction point. So I'm going to, yep, see that? Clean that all out. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So that's that. I think that part's good. That's good. We cleaned the piston. Now the top here is also pretty disgusting. I mean, look at that. So that's 20 hours worth of pumping tanks and just completely getting beat on for months. Now, usually what these things have, and this is a little bit better of a compression head than I've seen on the other stuff. So it's got to have like a intake or some sort of check valve, and I'm thinking it's this. So let's go ahead and we'll get that off. Hopefully I can do it here. Oh man, that's on there. I should have maybe taken that off first. I'll find a smart way to do this without, it's hard to do on camera. So let me see if I can get that off camera, and then we'll continue. Okay, ended up getting that off with just a socket wrench right there. It is a 13mm socket. Now, ooh, that is dirty. So there should be, I think it's a check valve. We'll see. Yep, just a little check valve. So, and it's dirty. It looks like it's sucked in some sort of fibrous material, and it just needs to be cleaned. So I'm going to get a Q-tip and clean out in there, but just before we do that, let's see how dirty this thing was. Ooh. Looks like it's got some grime just kind of stuck on it. So what I'll do is clean that off as best I can. Might use a little bit of a wire brush, and then there is an O-ring on the bottom there. So let's just pick that off. Might be reusable, might not be, but since I have a whole kit of O-rings, I'm just going to replace it. I'm not sure if that one came in the kit from ToAuto or not, but yep, so there's that, and then here's the actual little one-way, and pretty dirty. So we'll clean those up. That was a good thing to take this off and just give it a look, because it is pretty dirty. So we'll clean out inside there with a Q-tip, making sure not to leave any fibers from the Q-tip in there. And then we'll go ahead and reassemble. All right. Let's see how dirty it is in there. Not bad. Not too bad. It's actually surprisingly not bad. It looks really dark, but all right. So I feel like that's pretty clean. We'll do the old twisting a paper towel into it. And whenever you do this, just be careful, because you probably will leave some fibers behind. So just blow it out. You can either just blow it out with your own air from your lungs, or take a little compressed bottle and blow it out. All right, that's looking pretty good. So we'll go ahead and clean this up the rest of the way. I'll put a little bit of, I guess I'll use just a tiny bit of silicone oil, and then I'll replace that O-ring, and we'll pop her back in there. All right, so I actually just dug up the kit that ToAuto gives you, and check it out. They give you a brand new one of those. So rather than even bother cleaning this one up, I'm just gonna put it back in my kit as a spare, because I think that still could be used. But 20 hours, let's just replace it with a brand new one. Look at the difference. Very nice. Thank you, ToAuto, for including that. That's very cool. So let's see. Maybe it even has, oh, looks like, so they give you a couple of those little discs in there. Very cool. And yeah, they give you like three extra ones. Cool. We don't have the O-ring, so I'm gonna have to go in my kit for that, but that's okay. So we'll just take that. I'll put this in a little Ziploc baggie, put it back in here as a last minute emergency spare, and we'll just replace that. Very cool. All right, I adjusted my camera a little bit. Hopefully everything's more in frame. So of course, we always have a giant bag of O-rings, being a paintball tech for millions of years. And I just put a little bit of silicone grease on there. Got a new O-ring on there. Looks about the right size. I'm not too worried about it. We'll also just take a tiny bit of that silicone grease and give a nice little coating to that. Do a little test fit. Looks good. And then we'll go ahead and put this back in there. All right, that's looking pretty good. Got that reassembled. Remember, 13 millimeter socket for that guy. All right, so that part is pretty well good. Just want to make sure I clean here. And then what we'll also do is grab another paper towel and do the old twist method. And I just want to make sure everything's cool inside here in terms of cleanliness. So I just like to twist it like that. And yep, there was some dirtiness in there. So let's just do another little twist like this. What I'm trying to do is twist it all the way down until I feel it hit the bottom in there. And I think it's there. So, okay, see how that was perfectly squared up, how it hit the bottom. So we know that's pretty clean in there. Good. I think this is looking pretty good. This O-ring is looking just fine. No nicks, no tears, no aging. It looks really good. So what I will do is, we've got this all cleaned up. What we're going to do is put a little bit of silicone grease on it. I usually use a lot of this stuff, but here, this is like a graphite seal. So they kind of are self-lubing. It might be kind of actually a bad idea to even lube this, but I don't know. I feel like I should, so I'm going to. Just a very light lubing. And then remember, that secondary piston in there is the same thing. So get a little bit of lube right there. Now this, so you're pumping out of this cylinder and the outside cylinder. So what we can do is, I guess we'll take this guy, put some lube on the inside. Now this, I was looking at it, it does not matter which way it goes. It's completely, can go either way. So I will put a little bit of lube on the inside of there. We'll get that nicely fitted right there. This piston should then, now remember, we're going to have to kind of pinch that, get it in there. And it's a little cockeyed. Okay, so that seems good. And I could feel that that did create a little bit of pressure there. So that's good. Then we're going to take, remember, this was like this, and that was like that. So we're going to, for this, I'll actually use oil. Put a little silicone oil there, because remember, this makes contact with that in there. So I'm going to rub a little bit of oil in there as well. Put a little puddle right there, and that'll give me something to work with. Okay, so I'm going to lube that up. And I'm just inspecting it. It looks pretty good. And we also want to make sure that O-ring stays fresh. So I'm going to rub a little bit of that lube over there. It should be good. And then all we got to do is carefully push that through without damaging anything. There we go. And then the only thing left to do is get this back in there, which is a little bit difficult, but as long as we get the threads in there suitably. Okay, looks like I got the thread started. Good. So all we got to do is tighten that up, and you want to really tighten that because it's a compression fitting. So you're basically taking the soft material, which is that copper tubing, and you're just jamming it into that other metal surface to create a seal. So it doesn't use an O-ring or anything. It's just a compression fit. All right, so that is super on there. Let's make sure this one's tight. That one's super tight. All right, that should be good. Okay, so it is actually a day later. And if you have a real sharp eye, you might notice that these screws are no longer black, but they are stainless steel. So what I ended up doing was once I put these back in, the original ones, I tightened them down real tight, and I noticed that the threads were sort of giving way. I don't know if you can see that there. Now these are about 90 millimeters. The replacement ones I got are about 100. So they're a little longer, but the way that they stick out under there, they're not going to get hit by anything. So they're out of the way. So it's fine. The extra length, no problem. But I wanted that extra strength because that cylinder is pumping 4,500 PSI. So went ahead and put those in there. They were $10 on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the comments if you guys want to upgrade your screws when you go to rebuild this thing. I would highly recommend doing that. But basically, we got the whole unit back together. So now all it is a matter of installing the motor back in here and routing my wires back into their respective sockets there, and then just simply bolting back up the cover, and we should be good to go. All right, we've got everything back together. The motor is mounted. The plugs are all plugged back into their respective sockets. Everything's looking pretty good. Got the new stainless steel bolts in there holding the piston on, so that should be a slight upgrade. I've got the auto stop set to about 200 bar, and I've got the dead end plug in there. So we're going to do a function test just with the cover off at first to just make sure that this thing is pumping up the pressure and is not leaking and is good. Okay, so it turned on when I plugged it in. That's a good sign. Pressure is climbing. All right, so the auto stop worked, and I think we've got a rebuilt compressor. So now we'll fill a tank with it. All right, so I filled a smaller tank, and now we're going to try to fill a larger tank. I've let the compressor cool back down. This is a 90 CI Ninja fill tank. I've also got a big moisture filter there, which makes it take longer to fill, but it's worth it because I don't like getting moisture in my tanks. So what we'll do is we'll fill this thing up, and it is currently like right at, what does it say, like, I don't know, 3750 psi, and it is currently 658. So I won't make you sit through all this, but I'll come back here in a second, and once it's filled, and we'll see how much time it took. Getting real close. Any second now, she should auto shut off. All right, there it goes. And 716. So it was actually, right when I turned it on, it had flipped over to 659. So just a little over 15 minutes, and that's with the big, giant moisture filter on there. And you could see it ended at about 30 degrees Celsius, which is not bad. The maximum on this thing is like, I think it's 65. So there you have it. That compressor is repaired, and I would say working a little bit better than it was before, because I was expecting a full 20 minutes to get about 1,000 PSI in that big old tank. All right, we can see we've got a clean 4,500 PSI in there, and that compressor had no problem doing it, only got up to about 30 degrees. And next, I'm going to challenge it a little bit, and I'll sit here and fill that whomper with it, which is not recommended, but if you do it in stages, it'll be fine, especially because this one has just like the paintball tank, has a one-way valve on it. So it's not like you're just full blasting against 4,500 PSI. You're just clicking a little valve open every time. So that should be fine. But anyway, hopefully you guys found this helpful to do some maintenance on your compressors, or at least understand how it operates. So thanks for tuning in. I'd appreciate it if you check out my Amazon links below. That helps support the channel. And other than that, man, thanks a lot for watching, guys, and have a great day. Peace.